Hello everyone. So for this stream today, and my apologies for the delay since last stream, but I was trying to get a bit of a better handle on how these new templates are created, and also I've run into a little bit of a bug that hopefully will be fixed with the next release. Also, I got a microphone, so if you guys can let me know how the audio is coming through, that'd be excellent. For this stream today, what I'm planning on doing is doing that switch from first person to third person and back. So that's a pretty straightforward process, and we will run into that little bug that I mentioned. So hopefully within next release, hopefully there'll be an update to these templates, and that will be fixed. But until then, I'll kind of lay down the groundwork, and we'll see what happens then. So let's do a quick refresher in our last stream. Let's see where we left off. So I believe we had our player walking around, crouching, the idle animations in place. So what we'll do is we'll do the camera switch so that it goes into a first person view, and also switching the character file. Okay, so let's get to it. Go into our solution directory and fire up our game solution here. Alright, so first thing, actually no, this is, my apologies, seems to be an older version of this. I'm not sure why I went into that one. Let's go and reveal an explorer. Solutions, and here we go. Okay, so let's start off by trying to capture that action. So whenever we press the button that we select for switching this cam, let's see if there is anything happening. We'll just do a cry log for now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this action is going to pretty much mirror what we're doing for the shooting action. So that I'm just going to copy and paste this here, and I'm just going to place it right above. Okay, so I'm going to remove all this stuff because we don't really need it. We're not shooting anything. So let's rename this to cam switch, and also make sure we're placing it down here, or we're binding the action. And also don't forget to change your key. So again, to pre-populate this drop down, I'm just pressing Control Space. So as I start typing, I'm just going to use Tab for this one. You can use whatever key you'd like. Okay, so let's see, if activation mode equals pressed, let's do a quick log, and we'll change this changing camera, just to make sure that our key is working properly. Let's do a quick build. Hopefully we don't have any bugaboos in here. There we go. So let's fire up our stream Mixamo project and see if we're tracking that in the console. So let's open up our level, and you can go to Tools if you don't have the console up already, and open up Console, and I'm just going to dock it to this bottom section here. Alright, so let's go ahead and press Enter Game Mode and press Tab so you can see it's reacting to changing camera, which is what we were looking for. Okay, so now what we want to do is actually have a way that we know that we are either in first person view or third person view, which is also going to help us with positioning the camera. So first of all, I'm gonna move this over to the right here. So in order to do that, what I'm gonna add to this is just a boolean, and so it's a bool, and I'm gonna call this m underscore is FPS. And I'm going to start this off by calling it false because as the game starts, you know, it's third person, so this is entirely up to you. If you start with a template that's the first person view template, then you might want to set that to true. So what we want to do now is actually based on this this boolean, we want to make sure that we're in the right view. So let's start off by adding another if statement in here. So in here we'll do if this is true, is FPS, else do something else. So let's call this changing to let's see, so to FPS, and let's bring this up here and changing to and this will be third person. And I think I have these in reverse, because if this should be FPS here. And this would be our third person. Okay. So with that being said, let's also add to this our current value in the FPS, which would be a 1 or a 0. So it'll help us to know if it's true or false, just for a little bit more debugging. So in order to do that, let's do %s, I believe is what it was, and actually it's an integer, so I think it was a %d. Yeah, that's a double. Let's take a look. I think it was a %, either a d or an I. So m underscore is FPS. For this one, I'm going to do I just to see which one is going to be outputted. All right, so let's build this up. All right, and go into our project and see if our message changes between this and that. Alright, so as you can see right now, it's just targeting that changing FPS, because the other thing that we need to do is once we change to this view, we want to set the value of this boolean to its opposite. So if it is, then m underscore FPS, we're going to set this to false. And in here, let's set this to true. So hopefully now it should cycle between the two. Okay, let's open this up and see what we get. Alright, so there we go. So we have changing to third person 0, which is false, right? It's not FPS. And then changing to third person and back to FPS, and there you have it. So now let's do the easier thing before we attempt to change the actual character, and actually switch the view or the position of the camera. So in order to do that, let's scroll down to, where are we? Update look direction, update animation, and we want to update the camera. So currently you see that there's a comment here saying offset the player along the forward axis, also offset upwards. So these are the default values, but we also want to be able to change these based on if it's our boolean is true or false. So let's do an if, and again we have m underscore is FPS, and we're going to want to change these constant floats to just be a float because we want to be able to edit the value. It says they're const, we can't really change them. Alright, so let's see, if it's FPS, we want to update these values to a position right above, the player's shoulder. So in that case, let's go ahead and do view offset forward equals, and I've placed this at about 0.1 f. I just want to be a little bit in front of the player. And then the view offset up, I think we can leave that at 2.0 f. Of course, if you want to change it to something else, that's entirely up to you. The other thing that we want to consider here is the position of the player, especially if it's crouching. So what that means is that in here we want to get the current state. So if let's see, m state we want to see if it's either crouching or crouching moving to crouching, because in that case, if it is in first person mode, we want to lower the camera, right? So, and then this one is going to be, it's either that or so crouching moving to crouching. So if it's either one of these cases, then we also want to affect the view offset up. So in this case, I think 1.5 will do for now. This would involve a little bit of testing to make sure that you have it placed correctly. Also, for a more advanced type thing, you could potentially attach it to a bone of the character. One of the things I don't really like about that, and this is entirely my preference, is that I believe if that bone moves due to the animation, the camera might move and sway, and to me that's a little kind of dizzying at times. So that's entirely up to you. Okay, so let's see if this works out and if the camera switches positions. So let's build this, and we'll give it a quick test. So let's jump into game mode. Okay, so we have our thing, and there we go. So we're moving into position. And let's also see if we're in crouch mode, and there we go. So the camera gets placed a little lower. It's not positioned completely correctly right now, but and that's where I was saying that you might get a pretty good result with attaching it to bone. But as you see, the player is kind of swaying back and forward, and like I said, it's entirely up to you. Okay, so that brings us to almost the last part of today's video, and that is switching the character. So this is also where our the little issue that I ran into is going to show up. Hopefully, it won't be, like I said, it will be fixed in some of the next releases. So Well, the place that we want to change our character file is going to be in here, either that or this. So in order to do that, what we want to do is let's place it right below our log here. So first of all, we're going to access our P animation component, and I'm just going to grab and copy it from, because basically it's going to be, I'm just going to grab this, it's just going to be this here. So we can copy and paste this both here and here. While this one, because this is not, this is third person, so this one doesn't change, this will have to change. And for that, I'm just going to go start the engine again just to make sure that I'm getting the right name for my my character. I think it's pantsguy_no_head, but I want to make sure that's the case. So let's fire up our character tool and see what we have here for characters. So it's pants_guy_no_head, one word. So this will be actually this one at the top, no head. Okay, so we're setting the character file. Then the next thing we want to do is, again with the animation component, we want to load from disk, and again the animation component, and then reset character. I believe the issue that is showing up, it's in here, at least from some of the discussions that I had on the Cryengine Slack. It's something that has to do with this. So it's either the slot does not get passed and does not get cleared properly, and you'll see what's happening. So once that is done, let's copy and paste this and place it right here as well. Okay, so let me shut the engine off and build. So hopefully now we'll switch between one and the other. Oh, and we're still not being completely shut down. Come on. Let's take a quick look at the task manager and see if it's still sandbox should be off by the way it looks, so I'm not entirely sure why it doesn't allow me to build. There we go. It might have just hung up for a little bit. Okay, so let's go back into the engine and see if we actually get a switch between the character files. Alright, so there we go, and we have our first person, but the issue that we run into, and this is what I was mentioning, is that I think that slot does not get cleared properly. So as you can see right now, it's still loading that, and I think right now I'm just I've by mistake I've flipped the files around, so this should have been here. And this should have been here. So let's try that out. And see what we get with this one. And as you can see, I'm not entirely sure what that thing at the bottom, I don't know if it's like the nose of the character, which is actually kind of interesting if you think about it. But then once you jump back into third person, you see that it's our third person character. Then when you jump into first, and if you crouch, you see that there's no head, so it's loading the proper character for this. and switching back to third person, you see that it's the third person character. But like I said, the issue is with this, either a slot not being cleared, or because you see that we still have this guy left in here. Um, so this is actually working pretty nicely. If it wasn't for that little hiccup, it switches between these guys pretty smoothly. One of the issues that you'll encounter, or it's not necessarily an issue, but I had to do a little bit of a workaround. So if you look closely, you'll notice that right now I'm moving, right? So I want to keep on moving if I switch to the first person view. But right now, if you look at me, there's no animation happening because it just defaults, and that is caused by this revive option here. So if we were to look at revive, so if you just go to definition, you'll notice that aside from spawning at spawn point, it's also doing a little bit of a reset on the current idle status, I believe. So the way I worked around this was to implement a new kind of a separate version of this for revive. So what I did is in player.h, I've right below revive, I've added another function here, and I've called this revive on cam change. So, because we still want to change. Maybe we want to have different. I mean, we're going to need different physics for when the player is in crouch mode, right? We don't want the same collider as in when it's standing. Okay, so so for this revive on change, basically what I did, I just copied some of this stuff here, pasted it down here. And I've commented out a few parts, so we don't really care about the spawn at spawn point. I mean, it could probably be kept, but for me, I found out that it worked better like this. Also, this hide, not really sure if it's needed for this. Set world translation matrix, commented that out. We want to reset the characters and physicalize it. So I kept this the same, and then I commented out these bottom lines here. Okay, so let's go ahead and call this, and we want to make sure that we call this revive on cam change. So let's go ahead and call this, and we'll call it where we change our characters. So call it once here, revive on cam change, and we'll do the same down here. And you can have two separate ones, or you can pass in different physics to this function if you'd like. Or you can have a separate one that would be like revive on cam change to crouch, or revive on cam change to standing, where you have different physics and so on. There's also just so you know, there's a revive at the end, and I kept that like that. I didn't change that. I don't think it's needed. So hopefully now when we actually make the change, the animations are still going to keep on going. So let's build this and see what we get. Okay, so we have our character. I'm going to try and look on down and see when I change this, if there you go, we still have the player moving, and we didn't have to, press the button again. So there we go. So again, some of the tweaks that you might want to do depending on your character as well is the position of the camera, which was down here. Where was it? Update camera, and I know I had it somewhere right here. So you might want to play with these values depending on your character, like I said. Or again, if you want to attach it to a bone, that's great too. With that being said, hopefully for the next stream, I'm thinking of moving the camera collisions over to 5.4, which should be pretty simple. So hopefully there's not going to be any bugs that I run into. And so until then, thank you guys so much for stopping by, and we'll see you in my next stream. All right, take care, everyone.